Okay, good evening, everyone. We will start now. And I would like to welcome every one of you to the Joy of Adoption platform, where we discuss everything to do with adoption. It's an interactive session, so you will be given a chance to ask questions at the end. I will start by asking the questions myself, and then we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions to our two speakers. I want to remind those of you who know this, and for those who do not know, we hold this adoption webinars once a month at the end of the last Saturday of every month. And so this is the one for March. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Joy of Adoption 5516, where you can find videos on some of the sessions we have had before. Today's topic, as most of you know, is adoption versus surrogacy. The essence of this webinar is simply to define adoption and surrogacy and help us understand the legal framework, processes and procedures guiding the operation of both in Nigeria. This is not a medical session, a medical advisory session. It is purely aimed at helping us understand both concepts well. Our speakers will just give you the facts for both. At the end of the session, you should understand adoption and surrogacy better, how they function in Nigeria, and be able to decide which way to go. We have two speakers today. The first speaker who I would like to introduce is Ms. Yemi Akinrele, who's the first-time guest on this platform. Yemi graduated from the University of Kent at Canterbury in June 1986 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in law. From Bachelor of Arts degree in law, she obtained a master's degree in corporate and commercial law from King's College, University of London in 1987. She proceeded to the Nigerian Law School in 1988, where she qualified as a barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Her career over the past 33 years has predominantly been in law, banking, and capacity development. Since 2008, she has focused primarily on corporate and commercial law and took a keen interest in surrogacy law in 2014. Yemi has advised over hundreds of families in Nigeria, the UK, the USA, Canada, and Italy on surrogacy, and has acted for fertility clinics in Nigeria on issues relating to surrogacy and third-party reproduction. Mrs. Bami Obasanya is a face I'm sure most of you who've been on this seminar before would recognize. She's a frequent visitor here or guest. She worked as an adoption and fostering specialist social worker in London for 29 years. She graduated in social work in the 1980s from Stevenage College, the social science department of Hertfordshire University, and worked within a Northwest London borough as a senior social worker from 1988 until she relocated to Lagos for 5 years in 2004. During this period, Mrs. Obasanya became a Heritage Homes orphanage member and was appointed the head of welfare in 2006 till date. Mrs. Obasanya was proactive in setting up and putting strategies in place for adoption and childcare in the orphanage. She's committed to counseling adopters and prospective adopters, trains staff members on best practices in the best interest of adopted children. Mrs. Obasanya is committed to and advocates for openness in adoption and works with adoptive parents through counseling to tell children of their adoption. She returned to the UK in 2009 and continued to work within the children and families fostering and adoption agencies until she retired in 2016. She's widowed with 4 grown-up children. And I am Yemi Akinrele. I'm the host and founder of the Joy of Adoption platform. Clearly an advocate for adoption and have had the privilege of 21 years experience working with adopters and adoptees as managing trustee of the Heritage Homes Orphanage in Lagos, Nigeria. I believe every orphaned and vulnerable child deserves a loving parent, and I do my little bit to make sure that we settle as many children as possible in loving homes. It is a pleasure to have all of you on this platform. I trust this would be a very enlightening session. Like I said earlier, most people who have just joined us do not know. You will still have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the period where I speak to the speakers myself. Now, without any delay, we will start. And I will start with Ms. Akinrele. Yemi, I'll give you 2 minutes for your opening statement on surrogacy, including a definition of it in as much in layman's terms so that we can all understand what's going on. Thank you. And when you're done, Auntie Bami, Mrs. Abasanya, you can do the same with adoption for us, please.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. All right, so thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Emma, for inviting me. First of all, what I'd like to say is that we often tend to think of surrogacy as something that is new, or it's a concept that people are just getting used to now. However, surrogacy obviously has been around for a very long time, ancient times, like biblical times. We see it in the Bible. But we often thought that those things were, yes, in those days of the Bible, but it has continued and is quite prevalent these days. And also we're coming to that knowledge because we're seeing it more, people are being more open about it now. It's something that people have kept hidden for quite a while. So surrogacy, basically it's an arrangement usually supported by a legal agreement, more so now, whereby one woman agrees to carry the embryo, agrees to receive the embryo of a couple or one person, and carry it for the period of the pregnancy, and then thereafter deliver the child and then hand over that child or children to the intended parents. Usually we call the couple the commissioning couple or intended parents in this situation. There are different types of surrogacy. We have the traditional surrogacy. Traditional surrogacy is where the surrogate herself is the egg donor, which means that she has been either artificially inseminated with the sperm of the intended father. And so in this situation, the surrogate herself also is the mother of the child. This is less common. In the biblical days, we mostly had traditional surrogacy. What we have that is very common now is a gestational surrogacy, where the surrogate is just the carrier. She's not donating any of her gametes. She's not donating her eggs. She's just carrying the child on behalf of the intended parents or commissioning parents, and then she delivers and hands the child or children over to the parents. We also have surrogacy that is commercial, and we also have surrogacy that is altruistic. In certain jurisdictions like the United Kingdom, what is allowed or legal is altruistic surrogacy, whereby the surrogate is not supposed to be paid It's not a commercial act. The surrogate has, out of her own kindness, decided to carry the, commissioning embryo and hand over to the parents.
Sorry, Yemi, let me just, sorry, there are few people who need to mute their, sorry, Auntie Bridget.
Is there anybody in this room?
Auntie Bridget,
Storage.
Huh?
There's nobody.
You may,
It's like
you may
storage.
be able
can you
Oh,
to
okay.
kindly
I think
mute
you
for
can
us?
mute them. You can mute them.
Oh, well, these are part of the things that I'm not too good at. Okay, she's muted. An
Okay, you can make me co-host. so that
admin?
Yeah, co-host.
Okay. Where do I do that now? I'm using a system I haven't used.
Okay,
Okay.
so just click on my name. It will give you some options.
Okay.
If you look to the right,
Okay.
there should be, you should be
Allowed
able to
to
make me a co-host.
stop video, make host. Okay. Do you want to change the host to Yemi? No, it's
Or you
co-host
can
that
make
I'm
me a
looking for.
co-host, yes, so that I can help
But
you.
it's not showing me the option of co-host.
Okay, so maybe you go to settings. You can also go to your settings, if you see your settings.
I don't want to
Okay,
tamper
not
with
to
anything,
worry.
so we don't.
I think everybody, except Temitope
I'm a little
Busi.
scared of
It's okay. Let's go
messing
ahead.
up with something.
It's been
Yes,
muted.
okay.
There's no noise coming through. So we're talking about also having altruistic surrogacies, which is what is allowed in the UK, where in this situation, the surrogate is compensated for out-of-pocket expenses for when she's, out of work, and for compensated or reimbursed, so to speak, for whatever loss of income that she has as a result of taking on the surrogacy. These sums actually come to quite a high sum. So if you're considering the value, it's the surrogate gets reimbursed as much as what you would pay a commercial surrogate, so to speak, but it's termed altruistic. In other words, she's not said to be offering it as a commercial venture. So, but what we practice in Nigeria is the commercial surrogacy, because the surrogates obviously are, have come to do this, while quite a number of the surrogates do say that they believe that they're helping a family, achieve their dream, but they definitely want to be compensated for it. And that is usually the driving force for them agreeing to be a surrogate. So that's the various forms of surrogacy we have in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. Yes. Did you want to say something? Yemi?
No, I think I took more than.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, fine. Mrs. Obasanya, over to you, please.
Yeah. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm obviously going to be talking about adoption. And, we sort of need to define adoption, because adoption is like taking a child, I say, in totality, because there is different forms of bringing children into our families, especially as Africans and Nigerians. A lot of us have actually experienced growing up with unrelated people, living with our families, our parents when we're young. They are not adopted because they have their own families, but adoption is an ongoing commitment by individual or a couple to take a child, usually from an orphanage, and care for that child for the entire childhood of that child and raise it as their own. So the important thing is that the adopter or adopters make a personal choice. It's not like nobody's actually asking them to adopt. They want to adopt because they feel that they've got something to offer a child, and they also have a need to be a parent. So it's like two kind of things that come together there. Their own personal need to be a parent, or if there are, in case of secondary adoptions, they've had one child and have not been able to have any more. So they've decided to adopt another child. But the adoption is not taking that child on, like in case of fostering, where you're looking after a child, like you go to your mom's village and pick up a child and bring that child into your home, and you send the child to school and you feed the child and he stays with you for the next 14 years. That child is not adopted. Adoption involves a legal issue, which is the child's adoption will be formalized through the courts, which is the only law in the land that is not revocable. When you are adopted, you cannot go back and say, I want to now unadopt the child. If you cannot provide for that child for any reason, that child will have to be re-adopted by somebody else or remain in government's care, depending on the situation. But it's not a law that, so when you become the parental responsibilities of the birth mother or the parents of that child is taken away from the birth parents and is given to the adopter, and is legal and it cannot be revoked. So that is what is quite significant. To me, it can be compared to when you adopt a child. It's something that has to be compared. I compare it to like the vows of a wedding, of a marriage, when you say it's for better and for worse, because both is going to happen in sickness and in good health, and hopefully till death do us part. And those are kind of very significant things that also happen in adoption if it is done properly. Because when you take on that child, and that's why I made the comment of taking on the child in totality. So you're not looking for an auntie or an uncle or looking for a reason why this child is not the child you actually bargained for. You have accepted it, you will take it, and you will care for him or her like as if the child is born to you. And the law will back you up by giving you the adoption order, which stops anybody to be able to take the child away for you. So giving the child unconditional love, making sure you are committed to the child's things that are really important. And it's been said by some people that you might not grow the child in your womb, but you grow the child in your heart. So the child has to be, but the love has to be unconditional. You don't start looking at the child and then one day you tell the child, me, I'm not your mother. The child might say to you, you are not my mother. And you will say, yes, I am your mother. I'm the only one you've got. That's it. And so those are the things I wanted to raise in this instance.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Obasoyan. There seemed to be an apparent contradiction when you were speaking. You perhaps want to clarify. You had said that it would be, it's permanent. The child is not, you can't unadopt the child, so to say. But then you did mention that the government can take the child back.
No,
I said where the parent can't take care of the child. I thought I heard that.
If the adopter, for whatever reason, decides to reject the child they adopted, and let's say it didn't work out. They couldn't bond with the child. They can return the child to the orphanage.
Yes.
But they're still the parents until it's readopted by somebody else. They will remain the parents, just like those children we have in the orphanage. You have parents. We may not know them or not know them. They will still remain the parents. They can't,
Okay.
you can't sort of say, I don't want this child anymore, and then you take it back, and then it no longer becomes your child. There's nothing like that. Just like in a
Yes,
birth.
okay, I wanted that well clarified. Okay, thank you. And Yemi, I'm just gonna go back to you. At some stage when you were talking, giving your 2-minute introduction, you did mention that there can be monetary compensations for surrogacy where it's commercial, but even where it's altruistic, I believe you said. Sorry, there are monetary compensations that literally at par with commercial surrogacy. In a country like Nigeria, where most people would tend to take advantage of this because there's poverty. Where do we draw the line? I mean, this could really be well abused because there is money involved.
I'm sorry.
Hello, Yemi, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So what you raised there, okay, let me just also clarify that when you say it's altruistic, as you know, defined altruistic in the like in the UK, what the surrogate then gets is what they call a reimbursement for you know, time taken out. You lose time from taking time off work. You're reimbursed for, you know, expenses that you make, things like maybe you have to maternity wear, you know, and all that. But those sums are actually quite substantial. The average amount that altruistic, you know, surrogacy would cost in the UK would be anything from 15,000 to 20,000 pounds or even more. So when you consider the, you know, type of sums that are paid and you compare with commercial what we call commercial surrogacy in the United States or even in Nigeria, it's a lot of money. So, but the only thing is that it is termed a reimbursement of expenses or for lost income for carrying the pregnancy. It's just couched in a different way. When you consider the value, it's, I mean, what you're going to pay is still pretty much the same as you pay for a commercial, you know, surrogacy, and much more, especially when you consider Nigeria, where you know, what is paid to the surrogate is considered negligible when you convert it exchange rate wise. The issues that obviously have, you know, come up with this is that people raise how ethical is it? It's like you're exploitation, you're exploiting the surrogate because the surrogate is usually somebody that is poor. And the reason why the surrogate is doing it is because she's trying to get a better life for herself or for her children. Sorry, there was some interruption there. So that is the ethical issue and the issue relating to whether surrogates are actually being exploited. Most of the surrogates, like I said, that I have interacted with, they also still feel that they are doing something good, which is like trying to help somebody achieve their dream of having a child. So a lot, I mean, one of the things that I do is that I do some form of reality testing, and I say to the surrogate, oh, why are you doing this? Because those are some of the important things that you must discuss with the surrogate. Apart from the surrogate also getting counseling, I usually ask the surrogate, why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve? And most of them will initially say to you, I just want to help the person this. And then I say to them, so will you do it for free? Then they laugh and giggle and say, auntie, can anybody do this type of thing for free? You know, that type of thing.
Sorry, Joy, can you mute your Joy Kalagbada? Please, can you kindly mute yourself? Joy Kalagbada, please kindly mute.
Okay, let me try.
Yes. So
most of the surrogates would let you know that they are actually doing it to help. They have that, they feel that, you know, they're giving back in a way. They're trying to help somebody achieve their dream of, having a child, but obviously they want a better life for themselves too. The money they are going to get from it, they're going to use it for their children, because I mean, a surrogate would never even be considered if she has not had a child before. So, I mean, preferably the clinics prefer to use somebody that has had, has given birth twice. Okay, so because that they've been through, childbearing before, they've had 2 live births, so there's less risk. And also, there's less chance of them getting attached to the child, because they have their child already. So they're free to say, okay, yes, I can help somebody do this. You cannot use somebody that's never had a child before to be a surrogate. It would be a very difficult process. So I don't know if I have answered.
Yes, you have, Yemi. Then the crucial question I'm sure most people would like to find out is, how much does it cost to get a surrogate mother? How much do you have to pay for a surrogate mother? I know it must vary. I don't know. How do you arrive at how much? And can you give us a range?
Okay. So in terms of total costs, I would say you're looking at minimum of 2+ million. Now, let me just also break that down. Okay, so you don't pay the entire, I'm talking about the sum that is paid to the surrogate now, what the surrogate gets to keep. It can range from anything from 2 million all the way up to, I know people, surrogates that also earn as much as 7 million naira. Okay, so usually it's, you have an initial sum that is paid to the surrogate, because obviously it's conditional upon the surrogate getting pregnant. So pregnancy, confirmation of pregnancy stage, the surrogate may get to keep maybe like 100,000. That is before she's confirmed to be pregnant. So what the commissioning couple will pay, they may pay a lot more to the clinic, because they obviously have to do tests to ensure that the surrogate is suitable. So, but in terms of what the surrogate takes away, if she's successful, the surrogate would take anything from between that 2 million to 7 million, depending on who is the clinic involved, or what the parents feel that they can pay. But the minimum, absolute minimum, will be 2 million. Now, that 2 million covers the various things. Initial cost of confirmation or transfer of embryo. Then she's paid some money for accommodation. She's paid a feeding allowance. She's also paid a maternity clothing allowance. And she's also paid some money for going through a cesarean operation. Usually the doctors, because this is a precious pregnancy, they don't want to take the risk of the surrogate going through a natural child delivery. So they will obviously plan for the surrogates to give birth by cesarean section. Also, the surrogates get additional sum of money for doing this. Now, where your surrogate also gives birth to twins or triplets, then she's obviously compensated in addition. There's somebody who's techno-camp.
I found a way to mute them now, so I'm doing that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So where there's twin gestation, she gets compensated for twin gestation. So it'd be maybe like 500,000 more. In some cases, it's just 300,000 more, but she definitely gets compensated if she's carrying more than one child. And if she's carrying triplets, obviously she's paid a lot more as well. So that is it. That's what the surrogate gets. The minimum these days would be at least 2 million.
It's 2 million. That's very attractive for most women in Nigeria who don't have money. It's very, very attractive. So it brings me to my next question, Yemi. Are there any laws in Nigeria guiding surrogacy? In other words, is there a legal framework to govern the surrogacy process in Nigeria? If so, can you share them briefly with us? Okay, because in all of this, it's pretty open to a lot of abuse, especially in a society where laws are not really kept most times.
Okay, so as currently surrogacy law is practiced based on the laws of contract, which says that parties are free to enter into legal relationships with one another. So we do not have a defined surrogacy law in Nigeria. They have tried to bring this up in the Houses of Assembly in the past, but I think we as a people are not ready to confront the fact that surrogacy is real, is live, is happening literally every day in Nigeria. So, wow. we sweep it under the table. So we do not have laws, but Lagos State has taken a step forward. HEFAMA, that's the Lagos State Health Monitoring and Facility Management Agency, in conjunction with AFRH, that's the Association of Fertility Specialists in Nigeria. They came up with a guideline. They came up with a guideline in 2019. And that guideline is not legislation, it's not a law, but it helps you is to, put in basic minimum guidelines that people should try to follow for assisted reproduction technology. So they came up with this guideline. So that is what we have, and that is the basis on which we draw up our, gestational surrogacy agreements. We try to follow that. But Lagos State is the only one that has that guideline in place. But
yes, thank you for yes, Yemi, thanks for that. So would you now say it's illegal to do surrogacy in Nigeria? Is it illegal? Is it criminal?
No, it's not. It's not illegal. This is how it goes in law. Anything that is not prescribed, anything that has not been, banned or said to be illegal, or you cannot do it, there's a presumption of legality. And like I said, parties are free. The basis of contract law is that parties are free to enter into legal relationships with one another. I come to you and I say, oh, I want to do, take it as a business. I want to do this business with you. These are my own terms and conditions. As long as you also understand and there's consideration, some form of consideration for, proceeding from that agreement, then that agreement is valid, it's legal and enforceable. So some people argue that surrogacy is not enforceable in Nigeria, but I have seen many courts that have upheld surrogacy agreements.
Oh, really? Because that was the next point I was coming to, that if it's not law, then if you have an issue, where do you go to resolve the issue? So you've answered that. You can actually go to a court of law? Really? Yes. Okay. Yes. And based on the fact that you can drop a contract with anyone, the judge will be judging based on that, I guess. Because, there's a recent, not quite recent, it was a case of, I'll see, I made some notes of it here, where a couple resident in, I think a Nigerian couple resident, he was in one of the dailies, but a third party told me about this, where this couple commissioned a surrogate to carry their babies, and we happened to be twins. Now, when the babies were born, she refused to hand the babies over to the commissioning parties. And there was really nothing, well, I don't know how it ended, to be honest, but I understand her reasons were that she was abandoned during the period of pregnancy. She wasn't compensated at all for it, so she decided to keep the children. Did you hear about that case, and do you have any comments to make?
Yes, I mean, that is the classic case of the wrongest way to go about surrogacy.
Okay.
From the facts or what we heard of, of the case, first of all, there was no contract in place.
Oh,
They did not have an agreement in place regarding this arrangement they went into. Secondly, I don't know what was in the minds of the parents, but I also understand from the facts that it was a close family type of relationship. So they knew one another. There are many times, that I listened to the conversation of the surrogate, and she used to, I think the lady was like her auntie, and she said her auntie asked her to have her baby or have her child for her. Number three, rather, the parents, the commissioning couple, first of all, ought to have, if when you are engaging a surrogate, you have to decide which is it. Is it a gestational surrogacy? Because in a gestational surrogacy, you would never have the surrogate use her own eggs. In this case, from what I perceived and heard about this case, it was the surrogate's own eggs. So you are telling her to carry her own child.
wow.
First of all, it is not done. Most clinics will not have a surrogate carry her own child, which means her own eggs are involved. That is her child. Even if she had been an egg donor in the past, she would not be suitable for surrogacy. They would ensure that, I think you have to distinguish, it's not ethically right to say a surrogate should carry her own child. So most clinics that know what they're doing would not suggest that a surrogate should be used. The surrogate's own eggs should be used in a place where she is acting as a surrogate. That's another thing. So there was no documentation. And normally in most gestational surrogacies, we try and make it anonymous. We do this because of the possibility of things going wrong this way. That is one. You're protecting the parents, okay, from any form of the surrogate wanting to come back and then say, oh, I think I can milk these people for money. Because you cannot rule that out. So we usually advise that a surrogacy should always be anonymous. The surrogate doesn't meet the parents. It takes away a lot of possibility of things going awry when you do that. And usually the clinic will act as a go-between the surrogate and the commissioning couple. Have counselors who would counsel the surrogate, and you also have counselors that will counsel the parents, because it's not such an easy journey. People think it's just that you hire a surrogate and she does this, she does that. The surrogate has her own feelings, the parents also have their own feelings. So it's always good to keep that separate. I know late in some of the other questions that you might want to ask is like, when you don't make them separate, a lot of things are involved. There are emotional ties that begin to build.
I was coming to that because I watched a film. Sorry to break you. I watched a film recently, I think last weekend, and it's a Nigerian movie where this rich couple got a surrogate to carry the baby. And when they visit her, the man would rub her tummy because his child was inside her womb. And of course, his wife got very upset about that. So is surrogacy not bringing in a third party into a marriage? Because you have a marriage is between two people. So when you introduce a third person in the marriage, which surrogacy is, we have to admit, how do we then protect family? How do we protect marriages in such a situation? And the other scenario I want to bring is where you have the man donate his sperm, and I'm glad you said you try not to advise them. They try not to let surrogates use their own eggs. Because in a situation where that happens, it's her egg, you're bringing the sperm of this woman's husband and the egg of this strange woman come together. That's what marriage is about, really, isn't it? So have they sort of gotten married, so to say, the man would definitely have some feelings for this surrogate. So it sounds very complicated to me. I don't know, what you have to say about that.
Okay. So usually we advise.
Mr. Bassinga, we haven't forgotten you were coming, but one thing is leading to another. So we're coming to you.
All
Okay.
right.
Yes.
Yes.
That is why we try as much as possible to advise that surrogacy is anonymous.
Yes.
In jurisdictions like the United Kingdom, where it's not done anonymously, the surrogate understands that this is a contract, so to speak. Surrogate understands what is involved, and she has been cancelled because both parties have to be cancelled. The parents have to be cancelled, and it's important that they should receive counseling, both the parents, because it's not also easy for the woman, first of all, coming to the decision to go the surrogacy route. The truth is that most women themselves want to give birth. They want to go through that process. The only reason they resort to surrogacy is for maybe a medical reason, that they cannot have the child themselves. Maybe it could be as a result of illness, it could be high blood pressure, various things that will stop them. It could be as a result of fibroids, or some people have had their wombs removed, or, for one reason or the other, but hardly would you find a woman that would come to surrogacy unless there has been a need. So it's not something that she's doing for cosmetic reasons, that, oh, I just don't want to have the child. It's because they have come to that state. So we're seeing somebody who already is quite emotional about the fact that she hasn't, she's not able to get into this carrying her child herself. So you're dealing with that, and you're dealing with her having to say, okay, somebody else should carry this child on on my behalf. Then you also have the man, the intended father. Obviously, we're all emotional beings, will definitely appreciate the fact that this is the person who is doing that. So even in terms of interaction with the clinic, we tend to see that it's the woman who is getting involved, and even dealing with the doctors, not the man. But there's some situations where the woman is so distressed. She has become so distressed about her inability to have this child that she would even leave it to them to say, okay, sometimes it's the husband that comes through, and he's the one, talking to the nurses, talking to the lawyers, because at this stage, he thinks, look, my wife has gone through so much. My wife has probably gone through so many miscarriages. She doesn't even want to do this, but I'm just saying that, please, let's give this a try. So where there's lots of emotions involved in all of this, and you also have the surrogate that needs to be cancelled. The truth is that because most of the surrogates, they've had their own children and they don't want any more children. The reason why they have come to
So is that a condition that they would not want to have more children?
Oh, no, it's not a condition.
Okay.
But the reason why the surrogate is coming, don't forget that surrogate is a mother, especially in the Nigerian context, and even in the UK. The surrogate usually has 1 or 2 children herself. In fact, the guidelines, the Lagos State guidelines, advocate that you should only use a surrogate that has had at least 2 children. So she has children of her own. The reason why she's coming into this is because she's looking for a way to provide better for her own, children, So the last thing on her mind, the typical surrogate, the last thing on her mind is wanting to take the child from the parents, okay? She's just looking for a way to make a living. a way to start a business, a way to, further her own career, that type of thing. So most of the surrogates we have in Nigeria they don't get too emotionally attached to this process. In fact, there is like, when can I, drop hand over
They don't want
child.
they don't want to hatch onto Oga that has a lot of money.
Exactly. So they just
and abandon
they
their
want to move on. They want to move on. But like this case that we talked about, she knew these people very well. Okay, she was actually living with them. She alleged at some point that they abandoned her. I'm not in a position to judge, but I believe that the parents obviously also trusted her significantly, because nobody does that. You're not expecting a child and then you forget about the person. No, it's because you trusted the person that you would have left so many things. Your I's were not, dotted, your T's were not crossed. And I think that is where they made the mistake there. And also they needed to put something on paper. I don't know what the agreement was with
I'm
the
going
girl.
to take you beyond that point, because we do need to get to Mrs. Obasonya. But just before I go to Mrs. Obasonya, where you talked about trying to keep the surrogate away from the commissioning parents. Now, how do you ensure as a commissioning parent or individual that the surrogate who's carrying this precious child you want is first living the right lifestyle in a safe environment to deliver your child at the end of the day? Because that could be very tricky. I give this woman this child to carry and then I walk away and she goes to live in her, face me, I face you place. And God knows the water she's drinking, the conditions under which she's living. So this can be quite distressing for anyone. I heard of a situation where they had this surrogate with one of the couple's parents, aged parents somewhere, but unfortunately she died. And they were at a loss what to do with the surrogate because they didn't want her to get outside of their view. And the woman ended up going to live with the surrogates. The surrogates? It's complicated. What would you advise? How do they safeguard their interest?
Okay, so I tell people that the minute this walk is a walk with God and trusting, because I get some parents and that's where you also the part that counseling plays, and also there's a part of it where you have to be trusting and to understand that your surrogate, first of all, is not a slave. Okay, your surrogate is she's a human being like you. You cannot keep her under lock and key. Okay, some agents actually provide housing for their surrogate and is to watch over them. The surrogate is a free individual. You cannot take her in like your nanny and say, oh, because you are carrying my child, you have to do this, you have to do that. Obviously, the surrogate will be canceled. And it's very, very important that, one of the things that the surrogate agrees to do is you're supposed to be paying her a feeding allowance, so she's supposed to be eating healthily. In addition to the amount that parents actually provide for the surrogate to eat well, a lot of parents also send provisions to their surrogates to make sure that they're eating well. The surrogate has agreed also to have to ensure that she does not have sexual relationships with anyone during this period. Yes, it's one of the.
How is anyone going to guarantee that? That's really tough. Yeah, go on.
Put it this way. The doctors say to you, we have to understand the surrogate is a free person. So what we say or what the surrogate agrees to is not to have unprotected sex with anyone. You cannot, I mean, even when the surrogate agrees that she will not have sexual intercourse with anyone, nobody lives with her.
Exactly.
Okay, so you don't know whether she will have sex. And don't forget that we have married surrogates. Maybe I ought to have added that. I ought to have added that at the beginning. We have married women who come with their husbands to do surrogacy. In fact, some agents only use married women because they believe that when you use a married surrogate, at least the only risk is that she's sleeping with one person, her husband, and the husbands usually agree not to have sexual intercourse with her for a period of, some agree that all throughout the time they won't, but at least the initial stages where the pregnancy is delicate, the husband agrees not to have sexual relationships, with his wife for that period. But we all know, I mean, nobody knows whether that will or will not.
And Yemi, sorry, the film I watched also, I just remembered that they had an issue. The woman, the surrogate, had one child, was married when she agreed to carry the child for them. And at some stage, her child died at the age of 7. So eventually she comes after the other child. She wants that child. And she had proof to show that the child was actually her husband's biologically, because the husband had died at this stage. And there's a period within which you can take in, and there would be some controversy over if the child belongs to the commissioning man or parents or the surrogate. Doesn't that happen? I've watched that also on what's it called again? One of these courts, American courts. I can't remember what it is. Paternity court. That's happened before.
Okay, so technically, from what medical personnel tell us, the chances of the surrogate. There's some interruption. The chances of the surrogate getting pregnant are very slim. That is, let me explain what happened.
But it is possible. It is possible.
Very, very, quite unlikely. Okay. Let me just
so it's possible. But let me,
So the surrogate, as soon as the surrogate has her menstrual, she's had her menstrual cycle. From that time on, they start, what they call down-regulating her, so to speak, basically, which is to ensure that she does not ovulate. Okay, so she receives medication to suppress her own natural cycle and prepare her womb to receive the embryo of the couple. So with the medication that she's given, she's not supposed to ovulate. So the chances of her getting pregnant are very slim.
Very slim. Okay. Yes. Thank you
very much.
I'm not
saying it's absolutely impossible, but that is the purpose of the medication that they give the surrogate. And the reason why they also give her that medication is to, thicken the lining of her womb without ovulating, which is what would normally happen if she's supposed to, if she was on her own natural cycle. Through that process of ovulation, after that, her womb would thicken so that she can conceive. So
okay, thank you so much, Yemi. I'm going to have to move to Mrs. Obasonya because it's actually 7:01. Mrs. Obasonya, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Yemi. Are there any laws guiding adoption in Nigeria?
Yes, the laws of adoption in Nigeria is actually formed after the British adoption laws. They use that as a guideline. So in most cases, the rules and the laws and the requirements are similar and they are the same. I have worked within the British system and I've worked within the Nigerian system. And even though it's very difficult for it to be done, systematically, but in most cases, it's formatted against the same thing. So it's different to how things are done in America or in Canada. But in Nigeria, most of adoption laws are the same.
Okay, and so the same sort of question I'm going to ask: if there are issues over the child who's adopted, and the biological parent comes back, there is no situation where the child can be taken, like you had said earlier.
Yes.
So if the sorry.
Adoption laws in the UK were put in place, started from 1926, was the first time when they started doing adoptions in the UK. And it's because of similar cases where there's a lot of children who need families, but they were abandoned or neglected. So over the years, they've fine-tuned it, if you see what I mean. So part of the bit that actually stops the parent to be involved in that child life is that you have to make sure, first and foremost, that the child is available for adoption, that all things have been done to make sure that that child either can find the birth parents, or if they are abandoned, all those lines have been taken to find them and to see if they can't look after the child. So that, because the law is clear that once the adoption order is granted, there's no going back. So legally, the adopters become the legal parents, and they become the legal parents forever. So it's very...
Yes, that's good to know, because that's a fear that quite a number of people who want to adopt have. They often say to us, would the biological parent come back for this child? No,
they can't. The biological parents will have to have been sorted and found, and see that they are not available, or if the child is abandoned and they couldn't find anybody, obviously the judge will make a decision that yes, adoption is in this child's best interest, because there's nobody who is asking for this baby and we can't find anybody. So adoption is the only option the child has, and then they would agree to free the child for adoption. Yeah. So
in that case, yes, are you done? No?
I was just saying that there is no need for anyone to worry that a child that they have formally adopted. That's why it's important to make sure that you go to the courts and formally adopt the child. You are then protected, and you are the only person the law will be talking to if they are looking for the child's parents. Yeah.
Okay, so what rights do the state, if any, have over a child who has been adopted and the parents have done all the legalization, which comes 3 months after adoption? Does the state still have any right over that child?
No, they don't have any right, because once you adopted the child, you become like any other parent. They don't have any rights. They can't make any decisions about where the child go to school or whatever. Those are the decisions that the parents will make. The only option that the adoption agency has is to make sure that they offer support to the adoptive parents, ongoing support in terms of, if there's any issues with the child in the future, maybe health issues, whatever issues, behavioral issues that can come up, then that is not something that is offered by the state or the judiciary. That's something that is offered by the people who place the child with adoption.
Okay, just in the same way I asked Yemi, You know, would you recommend, because here's a society where there's a lot of poverty, people always seek an advantage to milk other people. Would you recommend open adoption in a society like ours? And open adoption basically where the other family, the birth family of the child is involved in the adoption.
There is two things about there's what is called open adoption in the UK, and there's something that is called openness in adoption. So there are two different things. Open adoption is usually where the biological parents may or have been seen to be in a position where they cannot provide for their own children. So they agree to adoption, but the adopters are willing to work with them. That means they might give them options to see the child twice a year, maybe every birthday, every Christmas, they send a card, or they meet up for summer and go for a picnic or something. So the child grows up knowing that A and B are my birth parents and these are my adoptive parents. And there is actually face-to-face contact within the adopters and the birth pair and the adopters and the birth parents, and the child is aware. Openness in adoption is also it's more or less all those things, but basically it's about the parents, the adoptive parents, being open to letting the child know that they are adopted, educating the child, supporting the child through their childhood and beyond about their adoption, and giving them the confidence and taking away the stigma and the what will I call it, and the cover up of not wanting anyone to know that the child is adopted, so the child can actually live a free life and able to accept the situation, and the adopter is able to encourage the child to develop normally and be proud of the fact that they are adopted. So that both can work in adoption, but a lot is asked of the adopters if it's an open adoption, which I don't think we've actually at this particular time practiced in Nigeria. I think.
So would you recommend that practice of open adoption in Nigeria, seeing the sort of society we live in?
Well, I think when I think of my own practice, I think the fostering that we do in Nigeria, the fostering of looking after, other people's children, is more or less like an open adoption, because those children, they go home to their families at Christmas. They know that they live in, Abekuta, and that they maybe are poor, but they're living with this auntie, whatever, except that those children, these adoptive parents are now their mom, and their extended family, they will be able to, their own birth parents, they will actually have to still be adults before they can actually go and find them, because they will know where they might not know where they are.
Mrs. Obasanjo, the difference though is that the fostering parents in this situation have children already. So there is really no fear.
Well, they may not have children. One can take in a child and not be a parent. You know what I mean? It is possible. You don't have to be a parent to take on a child, either for fostering or for adoption. You can you can take in a child because for whatever your circumstances or your interest in, for why you're taking on that particular child. So I was just trying to explain that the openness in adoption is where that child is legally adopted by this individual. So the parental responsibility has changed from the birth parents to these adoptive parents. So legally, The adoptive parents are the one that is enabling the birth parents to still keep in touch with their child. But they are the parents that still make decisions and decide to go and live in Canada tomorrow. That is it. We will see you when we come back, will be the answer. They won't be asking the parents for permission. So that is the difference, really. But in open adoption, an open adoption is just, it's more or less to do with the child and encouraging the child to know about their background and their situation, like I've said.
Okay. Is adoption suitable for everyone? Mrs. Obasanya, do you think adoption is suitable for everyone who cannot have a child biologically?
No, because adoption involves a lot of commitment on adopters. I've always looked at it this way, that adopters have made that choice to want to adopt. They are not, it's just like, to compare it to the surrogacy. You go to see a solicitor and say, I want to have a surrogate. It's the same thing in adoption. You leave your house, you go to the alausa and say, I want to be approved as an adopter. And they take you through the process. So once you've done all that, you will be counseled, you will be seen, you'll be told of the requirements. All those times, if none of them suits you, you can pull out, if you see what I mean. But if you remain in the process, it's because you have some kind of commitment to that process and to the willingness to pursue adoption. But those who it's not suitable for will pull up at any stage and to say, me, I can't be doing this. So whatever there is that they've told that they should need to do, that they didn't do. So I think it's not for everyone, because I think the expectations of adoption is actually quite long-term, because it's not for when the child comes and lives with you. It's the ongoing work you need to do with the child. It's the ongoing needs of your daughter or son as they grow older. It's you coming to terms with your issues, your own personal issues within the process. So all those things come into be that I don't think anybody could just think of it like, I will get my baby or I will get my child and I will just skip away happily. I don't think it works like that. I think it does take a lot of thinking and a lot of support to make it work. And especially your family and extended family support. It is crucial, because that is where it's different to surrogacy, because your blood is not in the child's veins, another child, and you need to be committed to that.
Hey, thank you. Talking about your blood not being in the child's vein, Yemi, I know that there's some situations where we've just talked about where the woman or the man might have an issue and cannot contribute what's required to make this child. Now, when a child like that is brought home, doesn't one parent, for instance, let's assume it's the man who is able to provide the sperm and the donor gave the egg, would that not affect their marriage in some ways, and also the way they both view the child? Because the child is biologically the man's own and not biologically the woman's own. Does that raise issues in such a situation?
Okay, so
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just muting somebody else.
Okay, so I want to believe that, I mean, when the couple decide to go this route, one thing that they have decided is that they want to have a child. And even if the intended father, he donates his his sperm is used and they have donor eggs, for whatever reason it may be, I want to believe that they agreed that this is going to be their child and the intended mother will continue as the mother. But having said that, yes, this type of things do come up. In fact, there are some scenarios where if the couple, have issues, there have been instances where the intended father, they agreed to do this together, but then the intended father, then they have a tiff, and then the intended father then reveals to the whole world now that, oh, okay, so it wasn't even her eggs that were used. We come across situations like that, and that was not the original intention, and that was not the purpose. That has happened. But once the child comes into the world, it's the intended mother that looks after the child like her, and has taken on the child as her child. And she's also listed, interestingly enough, on the birth certificate as being the mother of the child. But we have seen situations where the man is now saying, okay, and we've seen this even in situations where the woman did an IVF procedure, which means she gave birth to the child, okay, but they used donor eggs. We've seen situations like that where when things don't go well between the couple, the man, is quick to say, okay, yes, it's not actually her biological child. And this type of situations, they come before the courts as well. The courts see them, and the decision that obviously the courts will make is what is in the best interest of the child.
Of the child. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Me 2 questions. Okay, sorry, you're not done.
Okay, yes.
Are you done?
And I've seen that in many cases of, because the mother is usually the first or initial and the closest caregiver, you've seen, I've seen courts uphold that the child should remain with the mother, even when they go their separate ways.
Even when the child is not biologically the woman's child.
Yes, but she has been caring. Because
that was one of my questions.
Yeah, because the court is more interested in what is in the best
child's welfare.
Will separating that child away from the mother give a better, would it serve that child's interest better? It probably wouldn't. So most situations like that, you would see that the courts will lean in favor of the child staying with the mother. It didn't matter that, it was an egg donor. And don't forget that also when gametes are donated, they're done anonymously. Especially in Nigeria, you cannot, they sign a consent form to the clinic to say that I have donated my gamete in trying to help somebody to have a child, but I don't want to take responsibility for that child. So you cannot go back to the egg donor or to the sperm donor to say, okay, no, so this is now your child. The court will only look to the 2 people who are supposed to be the parents of that child, the intended parents or commissioning parents.
Okay, so my next question might sound a bit biased, but, in such a situation, is it not just better they adopt a child and everyone is on the same platform where the child neither belongs biologically to this person or the other person? What do you think? Just your personal opinion there.
And the truth is, because of who we are, because, most people want to have that biological connection. It's only absolutely not possible that one of the, at least one of them should have a biological connection. That is desire. That is really the desire of most parents. They want to have a biological connection with that child. So it's only if it's not possible. And then, there's also a lot of, kind of taboo. Okay, I don't know who the mother is. What if this? How do I explain that? But if they are biologically connected in one way, then they feel that, okay, this is something that I can lean on. I can say in the future that, okay, this really is your dad, or this really is your mom. That type of thing is just our mindset. It's the African mindset, I think.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Obasoyan, coming back to you, just bear with me trying to put on this. Okay, much as adoption has become quite popular in Nigeria, there are a good number of people who are still afraid of adopting. Can you mention some of the fears people have and how they can deal with them?
Well, yes. Majority of people I've come across in Nigeria when they come to talk about adoption, or even after they have adopted, is that they're worried about inherited genes. Or maybe the mother might have mental health problems. And I heard that the mother was not very well, or maybe in her family, something is going on, which are not necessarily medically proven issues. I mean, if they were medically proven issues, they will have been put forward at the time of placement that, oh, this child has particular issues, maybe sickle cell, maybe whatever the issues were with the children, with the child, and then that will have been talked about, and the child will have been taken on knowing that. But what I keep seeing coming back again with most Nigerians is that when that child then starts to display a behavior which is common, maybe the child is now a teenager or in the early, any early years, between teenagers, and they are stealing. They say, there's nobody that steals in my family. It must have been the adopter. I want to come back and find out whether the birth mother had issues with that kind of behavior. So, or saying that they might feel that the child is possessed and it's something to do with what is inherited. So a lot of those fears are brought out in the fact that there is some unknown parts of the child. They talk about bad blood. The child might have some bad blood, as they call it. Not wanting anyone to know. So they're not open to adoption. They want to cover up the idea that the adoption. So they're fearful to want people to know that their child is adopted, and they want to present it as a biological child, so that, because they're worried of the shame of being judged. They don't want to tell the child about it either. They want to cover it up and pretend that it's all it's
biological, yeah.
out. Yeah. Those are some of the fears that usually most people tend to come. So it does take a lot of counseling and supporting them to get most people over those fears. Some of them you can resolve, like the ones we talked about earlier, about whether somebody can come back for the child. That you can reassure them, but there's some of these things you can't reassure people, so they just have to trust God that they've got the right child, and knowing that if anything is not the way they think it should be, they can work with it, because it can happen in a birth child too. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess the same point would apply to surrogacy, because if one party, Yemi, has donated and the other party did not donate, these are some of the issues also where you don't know what genes you're bringing into the picture at the end of the day.
Yes, you don't.
Okay. And I'm going to ask some. Okay. Yemi, I'll ask this to both of you, Mrs. Obasoya and Yemi. Seeing that we have thousands, if not millions, of kids who need a loving home through adoption, do you think more people opting for surrogacy will affect the chances of these kids getting adopted? And if so, what are the possible implications for society? Who wants to go first, please?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I don't think there is a fear that surrogacy would overtake adoption, mainly because of the ethical issues regarding surrogacy, in my opinion, and also, and that those issues are the issues was mentioning about the difference about adoption, the beliefs about the altruistic surrogacy and the commercial surrogacy. So that is also a big debate in the UK, because when you've paid money for something, you've put a price on it. And when you've put a price on it and it's a child, I don't know, we don't know yet, because it's early days, about how those adopted children are going to feel as adults. Because that is
surrogate children, you mean?
Adopted surrogacy children
yes,
are going to fail when they become adults, because it's not something.
And know that a price was put on them.
So I mean, when I'm throwing this out because I'm looking at the face of Yemi and I'm saying that.
Yes, I'm wondering. I'm wondering.
We'll come to you, Yemi. Yes,
looking at
personal opinion.
Yes, and not from a legal perspective, but from a perspective as somebody who is in the system of looking at here and being able to look at future in adoption, really, not in surrogacy. But I know that those children who were brought up as in a surrogate relationship, where they have one parent that is a donor egg that they don't even know who donated it, that is an unknown for that child. And when they get old enough and they start to ask questions, if they do find out, obviously, if they have a father that is the biological father, and they may not tell the child that the mother is not a biological mother, but it doesn't mean that that person can't find out in the future. They can. When they're in their 30s and their 40s, they can find out. And there is a lot of unknown around when it's not identified, when those people, so we don't have any way to see whether they have something in their genes that may affect these people or their children in the future. So I find that with adopted children, it's quite different to if we know. Obviously, might not. There's a lot of unknown on both sides, but with surrogacy, I feel in the future there could be some issues, and there's always cost implication as well. We'll never make it possible for most people that can adopt nowadays change over to go for surrogacy, because they won't be able to afford it. Not everybody can afford it, and adoption is not, hopefully we're hoping that it's not totally biased in terms of people's economic bracket, so you don't have to be rich to adopt. You can be an ordinary person living an ordinary thing, and if you meet the criteria, you deserve and you are able to have a child. Whereas surrogacy just only deals with the upper echelons of society who can afford to spend 2 million as a starter on getting a child. So it does apply to privileged few. So I think on the whole, I think adoption and all those children that are left in the society, we do have a responsibility as a community to look after them and to care for them, because they're here already. And I'm not so sure personally that I would advocate for surrogacy, because of the reasons that in the future, who's going to look after all those children? Do we need to bring any more into the world? Can we just, look after the ones we have, and not be kind of selfish in the terms of where it has to be my genes, it has to be, I think just have to, we need to give to everybody. And when those things don't go well, I know of an instance where somebody already on social media, a couple did surrogacy, And when the children were born, they were twins. One of them had Down syndrome, and the birth family said they don't want the child. So they said, no, we don't want, we'll just take the one that is healthy. We don't want this child with Down syndrome. So they rejected the baby, which was the baby they went to make. And it's their child. But because they abandoned it to the to the mother, who's saying, I didn't order this baby. I don't want the baby either.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are these things that we need to look at in terms of, you know, because those things will happen. You can't guide against that. When the children are made, not all of them are healthy, as we know. Yeah. So those are the things
Wow. That's very revealing. Now, Yemi, I'm sure you have a lot to say too about this.
Yes, I say, first of all, I'll let you know that even Lagos State tells, I mean, they share with us freely that they don't have enough children for the number of children, I mean, for the, the number of children that are wanted. So they fully support going the surrogacy route. That's one. Number two, with regard to parents rejecting their children, there's no way that can happen. I mean, I've never seen anything like that happen, because when you sign the agreement, you agree to receive the child in whatever situation it is, whether the child has any form of malfunctioning, or there's Down syndrome, whatever way the surrogate gives birth to the child, you have to accept the child. The child is yours. So you cannot hand over your child to the surrogate. The surrogate was not even there to receive your child, because when the surrogate is delivering, the child is handed over to the clinic that arranged the surrogacy. So the surrogate walks.
So you can't abandon the child in the clinic.
You can.
Can you?
You can be taken.
No, you can't, because there is a legal agreement that is governing that transaction in the first place. You have agreed in the legal document that even if your child is born with any form of
Disability.
disability or anything, you are going to accept the child. That is the contract that you have signed in your gestational surrogacy agreement. Sorry,
but as a birth parent, you can decide that you do not wish to look after that baby and take it to an orphanage. You can. There isn't anything. It's just, if you accept it on legal terms, like you said, you can then abandon it. You can, because what will you do? You're not going to throw it in the dustbin, hopefully. I know they do some, but you just, it's still your responsibility, or the state's responsibility if you refuse to look after it.
Yes, I guess just like abandoning the child anyway, which people do. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I get. Yeah. Okay.
Even if they had the child themselves, if they were going to abandon the child, abandon the child.
Yeah. Nobody can force you to pick the child up again. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And just to say that, I mean, in the over the years, I mean, I have seen how surrogacy has, helped both families, both the surrogate's family and also the commissioning parents. So it's not something that I would say that, I have seen it bring a lot of joy to so many families. So I would not want to, throw it out and say, it's not, it all depends on, the individual, which routes they would rather, go through. And even having said that, adoption itself is not such an easy process. I know of people that there's the wait. Okay, so it comes with the wait, you apply, and I guess it takes 9 months to also deliver a child, but it's not the minute that you apply for adoption that you can get a child. It may take some time. Secondly, I don't know.
But that also applies to surrogacy. You have to wait for 9 months, don't you?
Yes, you have to. Yes, you have to wait.
So there's a waiting period for both, basically.
Yes, there's a waiting period for both. Yes, and what I've just seen is that some people prefer a situation where the child is coming fresh from the beginning. They get involved, and the process of surrogacy is such that you get involved right from conception. You're going to go through all the medical, the process of obviously having your eggs removed, the embryo formed. They're there for the transfer of embryo. Some people believe that, oh, I'm part of the journey. You're seeing the child grow in the womb because they're also seeing the scan pictures. This is how the child is progressing, and all that is not, you don't come in after the fact. So maybe that's something else that, people also consider with the surrogacy process.
Okay, thank you so much. Both have been so enlightening. Atibami, what are the cost implications of adoption in Nigeria? We didn't touch on that. I know Yemi told us 2 million, the base level for compensating a surrogate. But what are the cost implications with adoption?
I'm a bit rusty in terms of on cost because I haven't done the adoption. I haven't been around in Nigeria recently to know how much they charge. But I knew the last time I was, it was bordering of 100,000. By the time you do, they ask you to, they do your home study report.
You mean 80,000? I think it was 80.
80.
Mrs. Oshintoku, you're there. Can you throw some light? Mrs. Oshintoku, I know you're, on things now. Okay, but go on, Mrs. Let's say between 80 and 100.
So I don't know, like I said, I may be rusty on that. I'm not sure about the current charge now. So it was 80,000. I'm thinking about 100 now. To actually get your home study done, you have to have your medical, to make sure you're well. That's included in the home study. Then somebody comes to your home to make sure that you have appropriate a house or a place or a flat. It doesn't have to be your own home. It could be rented, but that you've paid up on your rent and you have a good job to keep the child in a good, good lifestyle. Yeah. So that's what I know. And that is the same. It's fashioned against, like I said, the UK one, and that is the same thing. You do a home study, but here they don't charge for that. Whereas in Nigeria, it charges for the home study. If it's a adoption that's going to happen in the UK, there's no charge. But if it's a child that's going to be taken abroad, then they charge you. If you want them to bring a child in from Nigeria or China or whatever, then you are charged for that service because it's then seen as a service. And you need to have like police checks done. It's just to make sure that you're not doing anything you shouldn't be doing. You're an upstanding person in the community and you're in good health. So all those things we want to know as a parent anyway, whether it's a birth child or an adopted child. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I see Mrs. Oshintoku's on. Mrs. Oshintoku, are you there? She's gone again. Okay, Mrs. Oshintoku, I just needed to know, please, what are the cost implications for adopting in Lagos State? I know the last time I checked, it was like 80,000.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Yes.
We can hear you, Mrs. Oshintoku.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't hear the next time. I didn't know when you called me in. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you hear the question?
No, I didn't hear the question.
Okay,
I didn't hear the
asking
question.
what the cost implications are for adopting in Lagos State. Do you have the current figures? I know the last time I knew was 80,000.
Yes, it's still 80,000. It's not yet up to 100,000.
Okay.
But I think it's still not up to 100,000. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that, Mrs. Oshintoku. Yemi, I'm going to ask this because this is something I've heard people talk about, that the sale of eggs by young ladies has become quite rife now in Lagos. I know in the Western world, there are ways of, I think, regulating these things. Now, how do we regulate that in Nigeria? Did someone say it was $300 or so to donate your eggs? So I can imagine all of this, and I hear all the girls in Unilag go about selling their eggs now. And the danger there is, would they have enough? I'm quite ignorant of these things, but would there be enough eggs when they want to start having children?
Okay, so yes, definitely because of economic situation, you do have rampant egg donors, and the truth is that most highly ethical clinics will only do so much egg donation with one egg, with an egg donor. So in other words, the people who are thinking seriously about it would not repeatedly receive eggs from the same person over and over again. So I know certain clinics, they will only use this egg donor once, twice, or 3 times, or would make sure or try to limit it to 5 families. Once they have used this person's egg for up to 5 families, they will not use her again. But obviously, because in Nigeria, we don't have, there is actually a lady who was trying to get a lot of the clinics to come around. She's an agent, but she had started talking to a lot of clinics that, look, let us share knowledge with one another. Let us share this
because I was going to ask, how do you know this lady hasn't donated eggs to several other clinics?
They do
and then
that
come?
because and honestly, in terms of the remuneration they get for it, it's not like $300 or something. At the last time I knew,
much
it was
is it?
it was like 140,000 naira.
That's about $200.
Yes. So
Roughly.
yes. And those are the people who want to make a fast buck, so they will do it here, and then they know, because the clinics also don't want, because they're conscious of the fact that we don't want to spread this to more than 5 families. But all the clinics, I want to say, the reputable clinics, they always, they make they take these details down, and they ensure that they don't spread it to more than 5 families. That is not just from one donation. That is from usually there's something they also do that they call egg sharing, which means that if they get so many eggs from one person, then they may limit it to just 2 families. Okay, but over time, if that same egg donor comes again, then the next time she comes, maybe maximum of 2 other families, and then after that, they're done with that egg donor. But because not everybody has shared information with one another, that is in process. Like I told you, this lady is trying to make sure that all the clinics come together, let them share the information to say, okay, we have collected eggs from this person, so that next time she shows up in another clinic, they will say, oh no, this girl has donated here, she's donated here, we don't want any more eggs from her.
Yemi, how's that done abroad? Do they have like a system where they record?
Yes,
okay,
they do. Abroad, you cannot, the maximum spread is to like 10 families. So throughout your lifetime, you can, whatever you donate, but that's because they have records over there. And they are able to track, so it will not spread to more than 10 families. Of course, the consideration there is that later on in life, they don't want siblings marrying one another, because if this one donated here and then they may be getting married.
That is complicated. Yeah, you're just showing me another complication with surrogacy. Oh my God, really? That's a possibility. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Now, which brings me to the point, the next question I want to ask you. I know we've touched on it a bit, but what are they? I know they are ethical challenges with surrogacy. I want you to please be honest with us and let us know what those challenges are.
Okay, so the type of ethical issues obviously are, that people feel that, okay, this surrogate is only, the exploitation, part of it. Also, like the type of scenario we had where a girl, her own eggs were used, all that is very unethical, to have a surrogate carry. And like I said, most clinics would not do that. They would not, they try as much as possible to separate the process. If you're an egg donor, you're an egg donor. They're not likely to use you for surrogacy. And if you say, okay, I want to switch, and okay, I'm not donating eggs, again. And like I told you, the more reputable clinics, you can only be an egg donor maybe once or twice maximum. After that, then they're not going to try and, get more eggs from you, because ethically it's not okay, and you don't want to see to. And they also keep records, and they keep those records for future. Obviously, in places like the UK, you can always go back, even if you have been conceived using egg donation or sperm donation. You can go back years after, when you're of age, to find out who were my original parents, so to speak, to find out, okay, the egg donor was this person, can I contact them? The truth in Nigeria is that these people want to remain anonymous, so you're not allowed to contact them, but that record is there. Most clinics will keep that record and let people know if you come back, but they will not let you know the name of the person, because that person donated anonymously. So those are the ethical issues, with regard to this. And when you say the issue of them being paid for it, even that payment, the reason why they consider it to be low is that they don't want to look at it as a commercial transaction. They're looking at it really from the viewpoint that there are people who genuinely need, these gametes, and they help them. There are people also who, let's say, for instance, and people also, obviously, like people, if you have somebody who is a cancer patient, type of thing, people like that go and, retrieve their eggs, they retrieve their sperm, because they know after the process of chemotherapy, they may not, produce eggs and things like that. So those are some of the reasons why, or people who have been on that line, and they're now healed, and then they need eggs, but they will not be able to have access to it. So those are some of the, genuine or legitimate reasons why having donor eggs and donor sperm is available.
Mm.
Okay, Mrs. Obasonya, I'll come to you, but just before I go to Mrs. Obasonya, Yemi, do you feel we are interfering with God's plans for us when we go into surrogacy? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that, because in the Bible, we see where Abraham tried to help God by sleeping with his wife's maid to father a child. Mm. We know the consequences of that. Of course, immediately there was a rift between between Sarah and Hagar, and Sarah ended up driving away Hagar and her child. And we do know that rift has not ended, because we have the current day Palestinians who are descendants of Ishmael, and the current Israelites who are descendants of the promised child, still at war with each other. So when I listen to this, it does sound complicated to my little mind. And I'm wondering, is there not a place for waiting on God to perfect his plans in our lives? Do we need to help God? Because like Mrs. Obasonya has said, we still haven't seen the implications of this. And one of them, which you mentioned now, was the fact that you could have siblings marrying themselves and they don't even know they're siblings because no one's keeping records. I worry about how messed up and complicated the world could be, even with IVF and all of this. There is a place, I believe, for waiting for God to do what he wants to do. Now,
I'm not saying if you choose this session, this is just me and I have the opportunity to ask. This session is supposed to enlighten people. At the end of the day, each person should take their decision which way they want to go based on their faith, their understanding of God and relationship. So I don't want to bias anyone, but these are issues I have had on my mind. And what would you say about that when interfering with God's plans for us?
Okay. So first of all, what I want to say is that you wouldn't find people that just jump to surrogacy straight away. It's because maybe they have tried and they have not been successful. One. Number two, lots of surrogacy surrogacies that have been done have been used. They use the gametes of the couple, that is both the eggs of the wife and the sperm of the husband. Sometimes it happens that while the husband and wife, they may not just be able to get pregnant. There may not be even any, they can't point to infertility in either one of them, but they just don't seem to be able to gel. So in a situation like that, surrogacy is it's a welcome option for the couple. With the relation to the Hagar and Abraham situation, I want to then bring up Mary, the mother of Jesus. Was she not a surrogate? So she was a surrogate.
No, she was a biological mother. She wasn't a surrogate. Mary, she was biological.
No, Mary.
The child was biologically hers.
It wasn't. The child was conceived of the Holy Ghost, but she was the surrogate who brought Jesus to this world. Yes, Mary, the mother of Jesus, was the first surrogate.
Sorry, Yemi, Mary wasn't a surrogate.
She was a surrogate. That child was conceived of the Holy Ghost.
Exactly. So how would she be a surrogate?
But did she carry that baby and deliver the child? She was a gestational surrogate. She delivered the child. She delivered the baby Jesus. It was conceived of the Holy Ghost. A surrogate, nobody sleeps with a surrogate. It's a conception. And I want to let you know that it's only the Holy Ghost that ever makes a child. When the doctors place an embryo into a womb, it is a living being, so to speak, but that it will attach to the womb and grow as a child, it's only God that has it. And that's why doctors will tell you, a doctor cannot guarantee anybody getting pregnant. The doctor has the embryo. The embryo is a living...
Yeah, I mean, that's not biblical.
It is biblical. It is biblical.
Okay.
Seriously,
let's leave it there.
Embryo is growing. That it is placed in the womb. If it was outside of God's power, the doctor would be able to make every woman get pregnant. But you put the embryo there and you leave it to God. It is only the Holy Ghost that makes that embryo attach to the womb and start growing as a living being. That God has never taken away. He has never given that to man. So it is still the Holy Spirit that gives life, that brings that life. When a child was formed, they said from the earth, God breathed that life. That breathing that life into that embryo, for it to attach the womb and start growing as a living being, it is God. It is not the doctor. The doctor has never been.
Thank you. The point is well made. We have to go on to Mrs. Obasonya. I'll be asking you the same question. Mrs. Obasonya, can you go?
Yes.
Are there any ethical challenges with adopting?
Well, the ethical challenges I find is there aren't that many ethical challenges. There are personal challenges, I feel, with adopt, because the child is already here. So there isn't anything that is stopping that from happening. The challenges the parents have is to be able to want that child, irrespective of how he's been packaged, and everybody comes with their own baggage. There isn't a child that just because we can't find the mother or the father, now we can say, that child is just my baby. I can pretend that he doesn't have brother, sister, mother, somewhere. There's nothing like that. Everybody is, when the baby, newborn baby that's born today, comes with a package of grandparents that could be alcoholic, mothers that could be, whatever.
Are those ethical issues though?
Well, not ethical. Just I'm saying that with adoption, there aren't any ethical issues that I can see in terms, because decisions are made by people who want to adopt a child that's already here, or a child that is already here. Though the ethical issues I have with surrogacy is that there are issues of, for me, there's exploitation involved in the people that we actually ask to carry this pain. We are actually exploiting the fact that they're low paid, probably low income, unable to say no because of their needs. That if on a good day and they have 2 million in their account, would they choose to be a surrogate? Probably not. So all those issues, for me, there is, and it's also about the gender. It's always the poor woman. The husband will stay there, like Yemi has said earlier. There could be sexual intercourse going on with them, but when the money comes, they will spend the money together, or he will probably go off with the money, papa, and don't give the woman anything. So there's all those issues I find, but ethically, I feel like adoption has been resolved. It's been around for a long time, and a lot of those issues of, as long as the mother is not forced to give up her child, or somebody is snatching the child from the mother, or knowingly, there isn't any issue. If the mother is giving up her child willingly because she can't look after it, then somebody else is taking up that responsibility and willing to run with it. And that's fine. There's no ethical issues there. It's when you think about should pregnancy and labor, should it be bought? Should we be putting somebody up in a room and asking them to have a child? And some Nigerian people don't let the person out of their sight because they don't want them to. You have to continue to eat, watermelon every day, whether you like it or not. But when you are pregnant in your own household and you don't eat watermelon, you don't want to eat watermelon, but because these people are saying you are carrying our child, they now have control on what you do in your life. And like Yemi was saying earlier, that sometimes, they're free beings. They should be doing it to what? But you're buying a service from them. And it's not by choice. It's because they have a need. So all those things are ethical. And I think they surround the reasons why in England, they are not encouraging commercial surrogacy to be something that is encouraged. The altruistic reasons for them, even though I know in a way people are paying for it, but it doesn't, what they're wanting is that they don't want anybody to run off with that idea, because most people can afford whatever they're going to charge here, but they don't want that people to run away with it and just be having, babies willingly under the fact that you can afford a surrogate and make some people poor. So the poorer countries are the people that do it in the Western world. The poorer people of the community are the people that always will do that because they have a need, which they feel that it can be filled with that. So, and when we look at...
Yes, go on, please.
Yeah, when we look at the length of time that this person has to be pregnant for, like 24 hours, for 9 months, and the money they pay them, I don't think really it doesn't. It seems like a lot when you think of it, like they're going to be paid $2 million or 2 million naira. But for 9 months, she's going to suffer sickness. She's going to feel unwell. She's going to be able to attend to everything and it's when you think that she's carrying this thing for 24/7 every day for 9 months, it's a lot to ask of a human being. And unless I would just simply say, just opt for adoption, if possible, rather than go for surrogacy.
Well, you will, won't you? Because you're an adoption advocate. Yemi, are there any, what do you call it, challenges, ethical challenges you see in adoption?
Not really. I mean, the areas where I would, because I have heard people, talk about the difficulty, and that is not such a easy process. We make it seem as just apply, and then you're going to have let's say 9 months down the line, you would have the child, and all that. But I know it's not as simple as we've made it seem. There's a waiting period, and sometimes you just might not get the child. I know of somebody who, that was years back, she adopted, and at the point of trying to get the child out of the orphanage, it was a big deal. She saw that the child had been delivered, the child was fine, but the people in the orphanage made it so difficult for her. She would go there time and time over. She had to, in the end, pull strings at the, Lagos State before they would release that child to her, because they started making demands. They didn't make demands because they knew of her connection there, but, she was being, at some point, one person even said to her, and I thought that was the most insensitive thing to her.
What does that mean?
That, in other words, you want to use somebody's child as your child. And this is somebody that had been believing God for a child for so long. But, those were the people at the orphanage that said things like that to her. So it's not that it's that simple either to, adopting a child. It's not as simple as that. So each one comes with its own advantages and disadvantages. And at the end of the day, the individual has to, decide, which one would I, rather go for.
And that's why we had this session, to be able to put it up. We have to come to a close. I'll give, if anyone has any questions, we can take 2 questions, because it's past 8 already. So does anyone have questions before we close this? If you do, kindly let me know so I can unmute you, and it would be a fast one. No. Okay. So at this point, I think we would draw this to a close. It's been a very interesting session. Yemi, thank you so much. Both speakers, as you can see, are authorities in their field and have brought good insight into surrogacy from Yemi and adoption from Mrs. Obasonya. I thank you both very, very much. And I'm sure that the topic is not one we can finish in a day, but I'm sure if I called on both of you in the future, you will come back. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of you for being so patient, listening to this all evening. I hope you've learned something. Like I said at the beginning of the meeting, we're not trying to decide for you what you want to do. We just want to give an opportunity for each person, because I've been asked questions on surrogacy. I'm an adoption advocate, but I've been asked questions on surrogacy, and Yemi and I had spoken at a meeting before, and I found it very interesting when she came up to speak, and thought she was the best person to bring in here to tell us about surrogacy. Now, we have this webinars once a month, the last Sunday of every month. So the next one is on the 30th of April, and the time, as usual, is 6 p.m. West African time. The topic for the next session in April would be, what role should the church play in the adoption process? What role should the church play in the adoption process? And so you can, subscribe on our YouTube channel, which is at Joy of Adoption 5516. And to see the recording for today, please check also on that platform. The video would be up tomorrow. I know that there are a number of individuals who have adopted kids and are struggling with raising them, and others who desire to adopt but don't have the basic information they need to guide them. So kindly let them know that we have these webinars. It would be very useful so that the adoption goes well and it's not broken. Lastly, like I said, listen to the video again if you have to, the pros and cons for both, and decide for yourself, and may God guide you as you take that decision. There's somebody who's lifting her hands. I'll just give her an opportunity, if you don't mind, to speak. Techno, come on. There isn't a name. You can go ahead and talk.
All right. Thank you so much for this very rich program. This is my first time participating, and I've really been blessed. I was surprised when the lady said it costs about 80,000, less than 100,000 naira to adopt, and I was shocked because what actually happens is that people spend a whole lot of money. The process is cumbersome. It is difficult. These homes make it difficult for people to adopt, and then start money from parents who, for different reasons, are not able to have their biological children. I don't know if there are ways this group can address these issues. I do not believe that it costs less than 100,000 naira to adopt in Nigeria. Some spend up to 1 million naira because of exploitation by these homes. And also, if there are homes you know that are actually good, which you can recommend, some of us actually want to adopt or know people who are ready to adopt. We need that information of good homes. If you have such information, you could help to link us up. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I want to say categorically, because I've been involved in the adoption process for 21 years, that there are people who do not take a penny for adoption, and it's 80,000 just as administrative charges, which the ministry takes. In the Heritage Homes Orphanage, where I'm a trustee, I'm the managing trustee, and have been from inception, we do not take a penny for anyone to adopt a child. And there are homes like that, but we live in Nigeria, so things are prone to abuse. And when people tell me they spent 1 million adopting, I think it's really a choice they've made. I know this can sound a bit unfair, but there are people who would, you don't have to pay if you're praying. You can get these things done without having to dip your fingers into paying people and all of these people in wherever they are. I know what the challenges are. I know, yes, that in the East especially, people would tell you that a male child is 3 million and things like that. These things exist. We are aware of them. But they're incredible orphanages that do not take a penny for adopting. And there's no one